أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذ قالت الملائكة يا مريم إن الله يبشرك بكلمة منه اسمه المسيح عيسى ابن مريم وجيها في الدنيا والآخرة ومن المقربين ويكلم الناس في المهد وكهلا ومن الصالحين قالت رب أنى يكون لي ولد ولم يمسسني بشر قال كذلك الله يخلق ما يشاء إذا قضى أمرا فإنما يقول له كن فيكون ويعلمه الكتاب والحكمة والتوراة والإنجيل ورسولا إلى بني إسرائيل. I have left the recitation of the last verse because I think we will not be able to cover that much today. In fact, we have not yet finished the first verse on which we were discussing during the last session. That is Khalifatul-Masih IV. But before we proceed further, I should like to read the translation of these verses. When the angel said, O Mary, Allah gives thee glad tidings of a son through a word. Now, last time I also read the translation of this verse and forgot to mention something about this translation, which says, Allah gives thee glad tidings of a son through a word. Generally, the accepted classical translation would be different in this little, this particular word kalima. The kalima is translated as having been referred to Jesus Christ himself. So in the normal translations, accepted translations, that is to say the classical so far, the translation should have been that we have given thee, Allah gives thee the glad tidings of a son, that is a word. And a word and son are one and the same thing, alternative to each other. But here the translation in this Ghulam Farid, is it? Or? Yes, Ghulam Farid's short commentary is of a son through a word. Now this is not a real translation, it is in fact a commentary which he had intermingled with the translation. The safe, I think the right approach, which will not raise undue controversies, would be to make the translation as it is and write commentary notes below. But sometimes, inadvertently, some translator who wants to point out to a certain aspect of a translation is carried along with that particular attention and makes a misstep here and there. So this is one of the examples. In my personal view, this translation should have been rendered as it is in the Holy Quran, Yubashiruka bi kalimatin. Allah gives you the glad tidings of a word from him, Ismuhul Masih Isa ibn Maryam. Malak Sahib has done this because Hazrat Muslim Maud, for the first time, to my knowledge, pointed out to this possibility of the translation. And he was very emphatic on this, and he has raised this discussion at length from Arabic as well as from the other Quranic references. He has proved or attempted to prove that this translation is not only valid but also should be the preferred translation, that kalimatim minhu means, kalimatim min Allah or kalimatim minhu means that on the authority of Allah's word, we are giving you the glad tidings of a son whose name would be Jesus. So because it is explanatory and belongs to the realm of commentary rather than translation, so it should have been kept there, not intermingled with the translation. This is what I am pointing out. His name shall be the Messiah, Jesus, son of Mary, honored in this world and in the next, and of those who are granted nearness to God. And he shall speak to the people of in the cradle, and when of middle age, and he shall be of the righteous. She said, My Lord, how shall I have a son when no man has touched me? He said, Such is the way of Allah. He creates what he pleases. When he decrees a thing, he says to it, Be, and it is. Again, as I pointed elsewhere too, the translation be and it is wrong. And it has been influenced by the biblical statement. In fact, kun fakana is not the expression of the Holy Quran. The Holy Quran says kun fayakun. And yakun has a great advantage over other expressions belonging to express future tense, because in Arabic, this mustaqbil, the word sigha of mustaqbil yakuno, covers a very large area, much larger than normally is covered by the similar expressions in other languages. For yakuno may mean it will become in remote future, and it also may mean it will immediately begin to become. So when you read it as fakana, that is to say, and it means as if the moment God has said something or willed something, there is a spontaneous creation, and there is no evolutionary process involved, no graduation, no long, eons of ages involved in the development of the complete picture. So this is not what the Holy Quran is painting as the picture of creation. Yakuno means when God wills something to be, he says be, and that thing begins to be and would become complete. Yakuno covers all this longish period. So the translation should not have been, and it is. That is to say, it begins to be and it will become ultimately, and nothing can stop that process until it becomes what God willed. For instance, if the summit of creation is the creation of Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the founder of Islam, peace be upon him, then yakuno would mean that this process will not stop, will not be frustrated, will not fail to achieve that ultimate end until the purpose of creation is fulfilled. So when you say it means as if everything has just sprung up, like a magic show. وَيُعَلِّمُهُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَالتَّوْرَاةَ وَالْإِنْجِيلَ, and he will teach him the book and the wisdom and the Torah and the gospel, and will send him on a messenger as a messenger to the children of Israel. Now, before I start with the new verses, I'll finish the discussion on the last one, in which we were engaged in the last session. That is to say, إِذْ قَالَتِ الْمَلَائِكَةُ يَا مَرْيَمُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُبَشِّرُكَ بِكَلِمَةٍ مِّنْهُ. I was telling you that Hazrat Masih Maud has written in detail on the word wajihan and explained what it really means, and also refuted the claims of certain non-Ahmadi scholars that wajihan is an indication that because Jesus Christ did not prove to be wajih in the early period, in the first appearance, that is to say, he was ill-treated, he was insulted, and everything, all abuses were hurled against him. And such a man cannot be called wajih, as Jesus was treated. And the Holy Quran says, wajihan fi dunya. So, he can only become wajih if he returns here, and in the second advent, he is treated highly respectfully, and no insult is hurled against him, and then the version of the Holy Quran can be accepted as truth. Otherwise, he will not be wajihan fi dunya. Hazrat Masih Maud refuted it roundly and completely, and of which I have already spoken. But the non-Ahmadis take a somersault and completely change their position in this regard, and using the same word, they still want to prove their point in a different way. They also say that wajihan fi dunya means that Jesus Christ was not crucified. Because if he had been crucified and if he had been insulted, you see, it is exactly the opposite of what position they took earlier before Hazrat Masih Maud. When he got an effective, ample answer to satisfy every man of common sense, then they somersaulted and took exactly the opposite position. They say because the Holy Quran says he is wajiha, so it is impossible to conceive any situation where Jesus Christ was insulted in any manner. So all these stories of abuses being hurled on him, he being crowned with a crown of thorns and beaten and carried to the place of crucifixion with all that insult and hurling of stones and jeering, etc. That is impossible, because the Holy Quran says he is wajih. No wajih can be treated like it. So our version is correct, that it was somebody else, not Jesus Christ. Some Jew was given the shape and character as if of Jesus Christ, because he himself never refutes this, never denies his being Jesus Christ, So as if the whole character was given to him, imparted to him. And this man was insulted, so what? He was not Jesus Christ. So God, this is true when he says he was wajiha. But what about the insults before that? Before this act of taking him to the point of crucifixion, he was all through insulted, all through badly treated. But apart from that, if insult at the hands of people, ordinary, mean, humble, being worldly people, means such a man who is insulted by the worldly wise people is not wajih, then which prophet is? Because the Holy Quran says, Ya hasratan al-ibad ma yatihim min rasulin illa kanu bihi yastahzi'un. Kanu bihi yastahzi'un. It is in Yasin, Surah Yasin. Kanu bihi yastahzi'un. That's right, that's what it said. It's in Surah Yasin. The Holy Quran says that there is not a single prophet who was sent to the people and whom people did not treat most disrespectfully and insultingly. So that shows either, according to their position, Jesus was not a prophet because he was wajih and as such he could not have been insulted, or all the prophet, that is definite one thing, which is a natural corollary of their way of thinking is, Jesus was not a prophet. Secondly, all the prophets were prophets all right, but were not wajih. They were not respectable people. So all this is wrong, and crooked thinking has all created all this. Hazrat Masih Maud has also pointed out something which is quite interesting to observe, and which is completely new. You won't read such commentary anywhere else in the classical writings on the Holy Quran. He says, instead, God has changed the expression. In the first place, he says, wajihan. Jesus was wajih. And in the second part, it says, wa minal muqarrabeen. He was from among the muqarrabeen. Now, this expression may mean that when God says he is from among the muqarrabeen, all the other prophets are kept in view, and what is meant is that he is one of the prophets who are near to God and who are close to him, or one of those, whether in the past or to be in future, who would be muqarrabeen, and he is one of those. Hazrat Masih Maud has observed something different. He says it may also mean that muqarrabeen of his time were referred to. And in that light, it will be understood to mean that there was not just one muqarrab at the time when Jesus Christ is being discussed, but in the world there were other muqarrabeen as well, other prophets of God too. And he's one of those. And that one of those does not state that he's the very best too. So that is an open question. So he could be one of the many prophets living contemporarily at his time with him. And this is what Hazrat Masih prefers. So that must be right. I have already invited the attention of some Ahmadi scholars to carry a thorough research into this issue of contemporary prophets who did not come into touch with each other, because the world at that time was divided in segments which had no interrelationship, not fast enough for the news to carry within the lifetime of one person to the other and backwards and so on. So we know that the Holy Quran says at every time, in every nation, in every region of the world, God has been sending prophets. So let's find out who was the contemporary of whom. Because in the backlight today, we are in a better position to study through the history, the various regions, religious history, and find out if there was a personality similar to the personality of prophets in certain areas at certain times. And thereby we will be able to enlarge our perspective of religious history as it unfolded. Maybe at the time of Jesus Christ there was a prophet in China, for instance, or in Zoroaster was maybe. I'm not very sure, I don't know the the exact ages they belong to, but there would be certainly many prophets would be discovered, and particularly because Masih Maud has pointed it, I'm quite certain some very important prophets will be discovered in the world at the time of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him. وَيُكَلِّمُ النَّاسَ فِي الْمَهْدِ وَكَهْلًا وَمِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ. It was also told to Mary that he would speak in his cradle as well as in his kahal. And a lot of discussion is found on these two words as well as on the following expression of Min as-Salihin in the classical commentaries. Many things about these words have been intriguing the earlier commentators. So I'll give you a summary of what has been said or written on this particular verse. First of all, I should like to point out that according to the Arabic dictionary, al-mahad is literally cradle. But the word mahad is derived from an infinite in Arabic, which means preparation. So cradle is only an acquired meaning from that infinitive. Mahad is, in fact, the place of preparation. It is zarf for, that is to say, the place where a child is brought up and prepared for the next stage of life. So according to this, the early preparation period would extend, according to many scholars of language, from the first birth, from that moment of birth, to up to 4 years. Some have taken the position that it only extends to the suckling period. As long as the child is suckling, he would be called in mahad. Some say no, children even up to 4 years are kept in certain protected places. Sometimes wooden fences are created. Not necessarily the child is suckling at that period. He plays, and because he is not safe, he is not well prepared for the next independent stage of childhood. So the mahad would extend to that period too. You know, here you find children all locked up in play panels. Yes, exactly, play panels. So that is also a period of mahad. And in that period, children speak, and some speak more than others. So as far as mahad is concerned, those who insist that it is a miracle of Jesus Christ that he spoke during the period of mahad, they try to shorten the time of mahad to a year or two. But the fact is that even at that time, children can speak. We know some children in our family who started speaking while they were 10 months old. And here is Farooqi Sahib sitting before us. His son started speaking very early, and he is very good speaker, very fast and very clever in speaking. So it varies from child to child. Many children speak before the age of 1 year and start speaking fluently within 2 years. So even if mahad is limited to the suckling period of a child, still it is no miracle at all. It is an ordinary way of life. So why should Allah say about Jesus Christ that he started speaking in mahad? This is one of the objects of discussion. And the second is kahal. What is kahal? According to, correctly speaking, according to the dictionaries which are not influenced by the impressions created on the scholars about what was mentioned about Jesus in the Holy Quran, those scholars who have just treated the word according to the Arabic usage, they declare the period of kahal to extend to 50, even to 60 years. And generally, the consensus of opinion is that mahad should be translated as middle age, before the extreme old age and after the youth, in between, whatever is the period. So some people insist that it should be taken to start from the time when the black is intermingled with gray in the human hair, and when the head is turning colors, at that time you can start, man has entered the first stages of al-kahal. And kahula, in fact, kahula is the infinitive from which kahal is the noun, infinitive noun, which means the one who has kahal about him. So from then on until 50 to 60. Why 50 to 60? Because it varies from person to person, whether he is to be declared an old man or in the middle age according to his own health and way of life. Some people even retain the middle age period up to beyond 60. But the scholars generally base their opinion on generalities. So in some areas people might have considered people old enough when they reach 50 years of age, and in some other areas with healthy style of life, they might have noticed that even up to 60 they shouldn't be declared old. So this is why there are variations. But the essence is the same, that mahad will not apply to advanced people in age. The middle age period is what is described by kahal. But again, those scholars who are influenced specially by the story of Jesus Christ, as they understood it, would declare that mahad is a period from 30 to 34. Why they say it is because, according to them, Jesus Christ was ascended to heaven at the age of 33 or thereabout. So how could he be called a kahal by the Holy Quran if he disappeared at the age of 33? So they have to start early and finish there. And they say so, it means that he was kahal when he was speaking. Now this is a very intriguing explanation, because in fact it is exactly the other way around why Allah used the word kahal along with mahad. To speak early may be something very special. It depends on how early it was. But to speak in kahal is nothing extraordinary at all. Why should the Holy Quran mention Jesus Christ to be able to speak, or he would speak according to the prophecy, when he would be kahal? It only signifies that he would reach the age of kahal, which means advanced age. So not the early period should be focused upon, but the advanced period. And that is what gives light to the story that Jesus Christ was ascended to heaven at 33. Because according to the consensus of opinion, kahal should apply to the middle age, and 30 is not a middle age. This is why some scholars have described the age of kahal to begin at 40 and end at 60. Now they are nearer the truth from other angles as well, because in the raw youth generally prophets are not made. I mean, God does not entrust the important office of prophethood to people except exceptionally at age earlier than 40. This is an accepted historical fact. But there are exceptions, like in case of Yahya and like in case of Hazrat Jesus Christ, peace be upon him. So, if he was to be made a prophet earlier than the age of kahal, this prophecy would mean that although he would be made a prophet because he would start speaking prophetically earlier than the age of kahal, even at the early age of childhood, he would live up to the kahal, up to that responsible age where generally people are gifted with the office of prophethood. And that would only be true if he survived the crucifixion and lived beyond that age. But I'll turn to that again. Let me first apprise you of whatever has been said by other commentators and earlier scholars and what difficulties they have been facing in this regard. Generally, I depend on Razi, Tafsir Kabir Razi, because he collects almost all the various opinions worthy of collection in his great book, Tafsir Kabir. So if you quote Razi extensively, fully, you almost cover all the major works on commentary of the Holy Quran up to the time of Hazrat Imam Razi, which covers almost all the important commentaries. According to Allama Razi, he begins with this kahula. He says that according to a tradition, Jesus Christ was ascended to, not a tradition of the Holy Prophet. What he says is, it is reported. The word rawayat here does not indicate rawayat in the technical term, but what is said by him is, it is reported that Jesus Christ was ascended bodily to the heaven at 33 and a half years of age. This raises a question, according to Imam Razi. According to the correct lugwi mana, how would you, lexicographic translation, I think, that is the word. According to the correct lexicographic explanation of the word, according to Allama Razi, the word kahal does not apply to the age of 33 and a half. Because, he says, this word begins to apply to a person when he has expended his youth and has turned the corner towards old age. And at 33 and a half, we don't observe people having done that. So that creates a big problem. The answer was that rawayat, that report is wrong. The Holy Quran is correct. He never died at the age of 33 and a half, nor was he taken above ascended to heaven. But strangely enough, nobody ever offered the explanation that maybe in the heaven he is talking to himself all alone. They say, they have the concept of heaven as if in the fourth heaven, if Jesus Christ is living there ever since. They have not mentioned it because they believe he is the only human being living among the heavenly bodies. As such, he will not be able to converse with anybody there. Perhaps he is serving a solitary ever since. So this is the main problem. Otherwise, they could have suggested immediately, all right, what then? He is ascended to heaven and maybe he is talking to others, to angels and things. But they have all taken this position that this must apply to this first period of his life, of earth. And it does not apply yukallimun nas, because the word used by the Holy Quran are yukallimun nasa. So heavenly bodies may be there, but there are not a nas present in the heaven. So this is the only reason they are restricted. And they are bound not to offer such explanations that he would be speaking with Allah, speaking to angels and things. So the Holy Quran is very specific on this. That at the age of kahal, Jesus Christ would speak to people, ordinary human beings. So that obviates the possibility of his having ascended to heaven. That is the only answer available to us. No other way. So how they try to overcome and circumvent this hurdle, that is what is described by Allama Razi. Now, Allama Razi also gives his own opinion very categorically that this word kahal cannot apply to an age earlier than 40. He says that when the youth has reached its prime, this word cannot apply. And we observe that the youth reaches its prime and maturity between 30 and 40. So any period after 40 could be referred to as kahal, but not earlier than that. So he says Hussain bin Fazl tries to overcome this problem by saying, matlab ye hai, according to Hussain bin Fazl, it means that in the latter days Jesus Christ would descend from heaven and speak to people. So there is a prophecy about his second coming from the heaven, because when he was about to crucified at 33, and when he disappeared, according to them, he had not reached kahal, and the Holy Quran could not be wrong. So he must return so that he can speak in kahal. So this is the very interesting dilemma now they face. First of all, they try to limit the period of kahal to 33 or thereabout. And now they have to make a jump of 2000 years. And they say that he would become kahal after 2000 years, when he would descend. So far he has not descended. So what sort of kahal he would be at 2000 some years if he descends heavenly bodily? He will be the oldest of the oldest age, And they don't feel shy or don't hesitate to apply the word kahal to such an old person. Even if they did not know that he would take so long as he has taken, according to them, when these commentators, Hussain bin Fazl, Bajali, etc., were writing this, even at that time he was many hundred years old. Definitely more than 800 years old, or 900 years in some cases. So how could that person be described as kahal who is already 900 years old? Again, Lama Razi has raised this question that if a child is in infancy, if he begins to speak to people, address people, that could be miraculous, all right. But what is the miracle in kahulat, in his speaking to people, addressing people in his kahulat age, that is the advanced age, middle age of his life? One of the answers quoted by him is that this was in fact mentioned because it was prophesied that Jesus would change from infancy to the period of old age. If he were a god, he would not undergo change. That's also a very clever explanation, and we have nothing against it, because generally in this surah Christianity is refuted, so that could be one of the reasons. Why not? Another explanation put forward by Imam Razi is that in the early infancy he was to exonerate his mother by speaking of the purity of her character and her chastity. That was a very special talk, so it was mentioned. Not just ordinary talk of a child, but it meant he would address people on a special, a very important subject and exonerate his mother. That was what was meant. And in the second place, in Kahulat, he would be made a prophet. So he would speak of prophecy. So it is mentioned that he would also speak in Kahula. So there are two important periods in his life when he would speak to people from God, that is to say. First infancy and then Kahula. But then again the problem you face is that according to the historical facts, Jesus Christ was made a prophet before Kahula. And if he is understood to have disappeared to heaven before reaching the age of Kahula, then how could you say that his prophecy is mentioned here? No, all that happened before he reached the age of Kahula. Abu Muslim has offered something very strange. I can't understand, but what he has to say, he has to say. He says that it means that he would speak exactly alike in the early childhood and when he would reach the old age. And this is a miracle. By what he means exactly alike, we don't understand. If he has not developed in his faculties, that is not a miracle. That may be described as stinted growth. But they had to offer some explanation, so this is one of those. Assam is also generally very clever. I found him to be a very intelligent commentator. Generally speaking, of course, in that age of that limited knowledge, they committed mistakes inadvertently. But still they served the cause of the Holy Quran very immensely, and we should not underrate their efforts. But where they have made a wrong opinion, it is our duty also at the same time to rectify those mistakes, because our loyalty is more to the Holy Quran than to these great scholars. He says that only there was a prophecy in this, that he would certainly reach the middle age and will not be killed by his enemy or die a natural death before that age. This is quite sensible. Hazrat Masih Maud has spoken on this too, and as naturally was expected, this was a very special subject for him. He says that it means, although one can say children can talk at a young age, as such he has quoted himself, his own case, referring to the Choti Phuphi Jan, that is Ahmadul Hafiz Begum, his youngest daughter, who was at that time about 3 years old, that although she is 3 years old, she speaks a lot and extraordinarily. So an intelligent child can start speaking at early age. There is no problem at all in that. This is not the miracle. The miracle is that he spoke of godly things, and God specially gave him certain messages even at that early age. And that is understandable because his mother was facing a predicament and she was being abused and all sorts of bad things were said about her. So she was a pure, totally innocent but also totally defenseless lady. So according to Hazrat Masih Maud, as is also been suggested by some other scholars, though not exactly like that, but he agrees that God did make him speak something from him specially, which was wonderful to observe. A child of 3 years old cannot speak such things. For instance, maybe he was shown some dreams at early age, and he started talking of his experience with love of God and messages from God, which became fulfilled. I mean, that is one of those things which can happen to a child. I remember it does not necessarily happen to a prophet. It can happen to other children too. But in case of a prophet, it must have been very special. I know my little daughter Tuba, when she was very young, about 4 or 5 years old, she saw a dream which we could not believe she could have seen, and in which she saw God, and he gave her a message, and then the lights appeared and things. I hope my daughters remember it. It was a very special dream, and we couldn't believe, and we said she must have, some other person must have taught her this. Otherwise she can't conceive of such a thing. But because she had not met anybody, the first thing she did was, after rising, she started relating that dream. So my elder daughter, Shoki, put her to test. She thought she must have concocted that whole story. So to put her to test, she asked her to concoct another story about something else. So she gave her the subject, for instance, not for instance exactly. She said, give me a story about a rat and a lion. So she started making a story about a rat and lion. It was so absurd and nonsensical. And everybody laughed. It was so ridiculous and absurd that it was quite natural for a child to think of such absurdities. But the dream which she related was so wonderful and so well organized and so full of spiritual message that we were wonderstruck at that experience of a child. Now, if an ordinary girl with no special significance can be bestowed with such blessings by Allah, why shouldn't a would-be prophet be specially treated in his early childhood, and he should be shown words of wisdom by God which cannot be taught to such children and cannot come to them naturally? So that would be something which he would be doing at early age. This is why the Holy Quran mentioned it. The difference between the position taken by Hazrat Masih Maud and other scholars is that they only limit the talk to the exoneration of his mother. Now that could be ascribed as something concocted and artificial, if that was the only subject on which he spoke. Because a child of even 3 years old or 2 years old can be artificially taught certain sentences, and he can be made to memorize certain sentences which he repeats like a parrot. So if he only spoke on the subject of exoneration of his mother, that would put him in a very suspicious circumstances. Then people could rightly doubt his testimony and attribute it to Mary, that she is teaching her son so that she is exonerated, and nobody would take it seriously at all. I mean, if a mother gives birth in a suspicious circumstances to a child, how can people believe this small child, even if he says, my mother is all right, nothing wrong with her? Naturally that shows that mother has taught him. So what Hazrat Masih Maud says is not this. What he says is that he spoke miraculously of things which were from God and which carried their proof with them. Maybe he spoke of prophetic things, that God has shown me that something is going to happen, and it did happen the next day. That sort of thing is what is referred to in the Holy Quran, which shows that when people observe directly such a holy child, the like of which they had never come across before in their life, then they could not impute misconduct to such a child's mother. Because generally it is believed that the bastard children are bastards even in character. I don't agree with that. But that was the general accepted belief of the time, at least. So how could an illegitimate child be specially favored by God and so exceptionally as to be chosen for in an early infancy stage to carry his messages. So that was what was prophetic about it, and that is what exonerated his mother indirectly, though not directly. Another thing which is intriguing the commentators is the word minas salihin as it is placed in the end of this prophecy about Jesus. They wonder why the word Salihin has been mentioned in the end of the list of his great attributes. He would be a prophet, he would do this and that. And the word Saleh is apparently the first rung of ascendancy to spiritual heights. So why should the Holy Quran say Minas Salihin about Jesus Christ after better and higher things have been already told about him? Saleh means, according to the ordinary term known to the Muslim scholars, particularly in view of a certain verse of the Holy Quran, a man who is righteous in ordinary life and who has reached the first rung of favors of Allah. Then comes the status of Shaheed, then Siddiq, then prophethood. So after the higher status has been mentioned, why should God say Minas Salihin? Now they forget when they discuss this that the word Salihin has been not only applied to Jesus Christ but to other prophets of God in the Holy Quran. Even to Abraham, that he in fil akhirah he would be Minas Salihin, and to Yaqub and other prophets. So the word Saleh is used in with regards to the special tributes to the characters of prophets other than Jesus Christ. So the same issue applies to other prophets. The reason forwarded by Imam Razi is very sensible, and that is what solves the issue in fact, and we fully agree with Imam Razi here. He says that Salihiyat means, literally it means for things to be in perfect harmony and perfect order. Now it varies from status to status what that order would be. If a man stands at a low status, his salihiyat would be of a lower order. If a man occupies a higher status, his salihiyat would be with reference to his status, what he holds. So when the prophets are described as Saleh, it is a very high tribute, and it's not just an ordinary expression of the Saleh term used in the Holy Quran. This is why prophets are also claiming to be the Muslimin, while Muslim is the first initial act of becoming enrolled as those who submit to God. So all these terms should be translated according to the persons to whom they are applied. The word Muslim as applied to a prophet, for instance, the Holy Quran says, when God told Abraham to become a Muslim, he said, Aslamtu li Rabbil Alameen. Yes, already I have become a Muslim. I have submitted. So that doesn't mean that he was just enrolled as the first Muslim, new convert. What it meant was that the word Islam as applied to prophets would be much more demanding than the word Islam applied to ordinary people. Similarly, the word Saleh, as applied to the prophets, becomes far more demanding than it is applied to an ordinary righteous person. There it means that he can make do in his life, he is spiritually alive, and that is enough. But when a prophet is described as Saleh, it means he has perfected his character in the sight of God. And he has fulfilled all the expectations which God had of him as a prophet. So this is a very high tribute, and it should have come at the end of the statement, not at the beginning of the statement. Hazrat Muslim Maud has forwarded another explanation connecting the whole statement together and reading it as one piece. He says that this verse up to Mir Salihin means that there was no duality in Jesus Christ right from the childhood till the end, and there was no break in his character. No period in his life was questionable. Right from the start till the end, he spoke of pious things and he acted piously as well. A child of young age can speak pious words, but he may not be a pious child. So Minas Salihin completes the picture according to Hazrat Muslim Maud. And here we find the case of a child who was not only good in his words but also in his deeds. And he remained so, without the slightest break in any period of his life, till the end when he reached the old age. And as such, he remained true and consistent in his word and his character. This is also a very beautiful commentary which I thought I should like to share with you. Also, Muslim Maud has pointed out that the word fil mahad, that in the cradle age, is this expression is used to exonerate Mary, because children of wanton mothers never become inclined to good things. As children, they do carry something of the character of their mother. And a mother who is impious, who is wanton, can never bring up a child right from the starthood on the pious lines. So that was a tribute also to the mother's caring and mother's own character. No, the second verse, or yes, we have time for the second verse. वरसूलन इला बनी इसराइल अन्नी क़द जिअतुकुम बिआयतिन मिन रब्बिकुम अन्नी यख़्लुक़ु लकुम मिन अत्तीन कहैतित तैर फ़अनफ़ुख़ु फ़ीहि फ़यकूनु तैरन बिइज़्निल्लाह व उब्रिउल अकमह वल अबरसा व उह्यिल मौता बिइज़्निल्लाह व उनब्बिउकुम we haven't reached that far, have we? I'm sorry. قالت رب أنّى يكون لي ولد قالت رب أنّى يكون لي ولد ولم يمسسني بشر قال كذلك الله يخلق ما يشاء إذا قضى أمرا فإنما يقول له كن فيكون. ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة والتوراة والإنجيل. Now, this simple statement means My Lord, how shall I have a son when no man has touched me? He said, such is the way of Allah. He creates what He pleases. When He decrees a thing, He says it to be. That is the same verse I've already translated. But there was another slight deviation from the normal principles of translations, which was made by Malak Ghulam Farid Sahib by way of commentary. قالت رب أن يكون لي ولد ولم يمسسني بشر. When Mary expresses wonder, how could she conceive when no man had ever touched her? God said, كذلك الله يخلق ما يشاء. This is how God creates what He pleases. Now, this word kazalik is written with different punctuations in the Holy Quran. If you have got a copy of another, is there a stop or a sign of break of statement after kazalik in the Holy Quran you are holding? Kazalikillah?
Yeah.
I see. But in another statement, elsewhere, the same dialogue is mentioned in other places where a break is indicated between the statement of kazalik and yakhluqu ma yasha. If there is a pause between the word kazalik and yakhluqu ma yasha, then the translation should be slightly different from this. But because in this instance there is no pause, so Malak Sahib is well within his rights to translate it as he did. That is to say, the word kazalika would apply to the following statement, Allahu yakhluqu ma yasha, and would govern and modify that statement. Which means that although you say that you know that no one has touched you, yet Allah is all powerful to create as He pleases. Kazalikillahu, this is how God creates what He pleases. But in other instances, when the same dialogue is quoted in the Holy Quran, you would find a pause between the word kazalik and the following statement, which is indicative of another thing altogether, which means that you are right. As you say, nobody has touched you, and as such you will bear a child. That would be one statement. And the second would be, Allah creates what He pleases. Now, in the other instance where Hazrat Yahya and Hazrat Zakaria is mentioned, there also the same expression is used, and we will refer to that and see what the translation is made there in that case. It is the same. In this, Qala kazalikillahu yafalu ba'isha. What is the position in Surah Maryam? Find out, yes. I think it is there that there is a pause between kazalik and the following statement. Because I remember having positively noted this. If I am wrong, I should be corrected. Otherwise, there are two expressions different from each other. In one there is a pause which would indicate a different meaning, and if there is no pause, then there is
Kala kazalik, kala rabbuka.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Kala, the second repetition of kala makes the pause necessary. Yes, quite right. This is the show me, quote me the number of verse so that I can refer it from this. Surah Maryam,
chapter 19,
That's right, yes, quite right. Maryam. And the verse?
21.
Which verse? Yes, right to your left. Here it is, 21. Yes. قالت أن يكون لي غلام ولم يمسسني بشر ولم أكن بغيا. That was the passage which I had in mind when I said there is definitely a pause between the word kazalik and the following statement. And this pause is made necessary by the expression which is used here, and there is not a matter of choice for us at all. The Holy Quran makes a pause necessary here. Because here in this passage it is said, she said, how can I have a son when no man has touched me, neither have I been unchaste. قال كذلك قال ربك هو علي هين. The repetition of the word qala now makes it necessary to read the other way around. It says, the angel said, thus it shall be, kazalik. But says thy Lord, it is easy for me, and we shall do so that we may make him a sign. So that clarifies that there is a pause, and what the answer was that God can do it despite your statement being correct. The statement is not challenged, but still Allah says, it is well within the powers of Allah to give you, to create a special birth in you while you are not touched by man. But Hazrat Masih Maud has taken both these positions openly. But Hazrat Masih Maud has chosen for himself only one position, and he sticks to it. He says, Kazalika here does not refer to what statement was made by Mary. That is to say, it does not refer to her not being touched by man, but it refers to the following statement, which means that it is for Allah, Kazalik Allah. This is how Allah does create. And Kazalika here would mean this is the habitual creation of God. This is how Allah does things. And Kazalika would refer to the past conduct of God vis-a-vis creation. So this particular incident would not be brought to focus, but what would be brought to focus would be the grand scheme of creation of Allah, in which you will find such incidents happening. Now, he has taken this position not against Hazrat Masih Maud, because even accepting that, Hazrat Masih Maud himself has forwarded the same explanation of the Holy Quran. He says that this, when Allah says, يَخْلُقُ مَا يَشَاءُ, he means that your creation is not against the nature of Allah's creation. Not your creation, but the creation of your child, or the birth of your child, would not be in violation of Allah's creation. And Hazrat Masih Maud quotes that for a virgin to give birth is not extraordinary or unnatural. He makes a distinction between two things. Number one, something which occurs very rarely, and something which is unnatural, which violates the laws of nature and then happens. Hazrat Masih Maud has taken the same position, as in fact is taken by Muslim mouth in a different way. The substance is the same. That is to say, that the creation of Jesus Christ was not unnatural. It was not a miracle because it could not happen according to the laws of nature, and Allah violated the laws He Himself had created and created an unnatural birth. This is not what happened according to Hazrat Masih Maud and Hazrat Muslim Maud. What happened was, and why they took this position, and this is exactly the position of every Ahmadi, that Allah never breaks His own laws. It would be a very poor designer who does not leave room for whatever he has in mind to produce, who creates laws hurriedly, not keeping in view all the design, and that suddenly at one time he finds himself confronting a position where either he has to forego his plan, part of his plan, or to break his own laws created by him himself. Because that is a very bad reflection on the ultimate wisdom of God. So this is why Hazrat Masih Maud insisted on taking this position, and this is why Hazrat Muslim Maud chose a particular way of translating this verse, so that this becomes obvious and in fact becomes the only meaning available to people. Now, in view of this very intricate discussion, what precipitates is simply this, that what Allah told her was that nothing extraordinary would have to be taken, would have to happen, despite the fact that what you state is correct. It is not against the laws of nature, it is not against the custom of God to create children, even if a male has not copulated with a female. So that is not unnatural. This is what God is emphasizing in answer to Jesus, to Mary's wonder, expression of wonder. Then Hazrat Masih Maud quotes many physicians of his time and many scientists of his time who have taken this position that a virgin birth is a rare phenomena but not unnatural. Like, for instance, he says, instead of just giving birth to one child, if you give birth to twin babies, this is not unnatural, but it happens rarely. So if you go beyond that, you will find other rarer incidents like a virgin birth. I promised you that I would carry research into this region. I told Dr. Mujibur Rahman Sahib to investigate. Now there are certain scientific problems attendant upon this position. If a virgin gives birth without the male participation, then scientifically, so far what is known to man, such a virgin must give birth to a baby girl. She can't give birth to a male child. So this is what has been baffling me for some time, and also some other Ahmadi scholars who have been thinking scientifically on this subject. Dr. Sajid, for instance, in America, he is also a very scholarly person who was a neurologist, and also his knowledge of the Holy Quran and Islam is very sound. He goes on thinking on these things. He is also working on this. So he recently proposed one of the two solutions. One he himself rejects, and I agree with that. That's unconceivable. It's inconceivable. That is, if a birth is given not to a female, it could, maybe such a birth could take place in case of hijra, that is to say a eunuch, who is neither a male nor a female. But it's impossible for a God to give such a birth to his chosen prophets. I mean, this is something of such absolutely disgraceful nature that no one can ever accept this according to his own nature, that God should choose a hijra who is neither a man nor a woman, who stands in between the two, to work as his prophet. So that is out of all question. Moreover, it's not scientifically proved; it's just a conjecture. But there is another possibility which is scientifically proved according to Dr. Sajid, and I have told him to collect further data and further investigate this possibility, that sometimes at the birth of a girl, in her uterus, which is in the offing, is also carried the germ of the birth from her forefathers or father, etc. And that remains dormant and inactive for as long as the girl does not reach maturity. After that, it becomes sometimes activated and then gives birth to also a male child. In fact, the position of that child would be that of a twin brother. So, in fact, the birth is not a single birth, but is a twin birth. Only the partner did not, start developing as the other partner did. It remained dormant, and it started developing later on in the uterus of its developing partner. This, according to Dr. Sajid, is not only possible, but he said that one could find scientific evidence to that. So I have written to him to collect all the data. But what intrigued him in this case was, then how could such a child be referred to as the son of that carrier? Now, that is no problem at all, in fact. The fact is that even if a sister milks a child, her brother, it happens, and I know in some cases, where an older sister gave her milk, breastfed a brother, and not only technically but according to Islamic law, such a child became her child as well. The milk carries the qualities according to Islam, which officially declare a child to be a real child of the person who gives milk. So, if that can happen, if somebody carries it in her womb, uterus, and is responsible for all the development, she becomes a mother all right. There is no question of that. So, that child could be referred to her as her child. But that child could not be referred to the grandfather as his child, because that would involve other intricate problems, that as if somebody is born out of one's daughter. So because no act of copulation takes place, it is a natural inbred phenomenon. So normal nomenclature and things do not apply to these things. What happens is that we can only look at such incidents as miraculous, in the sense that they are very rare happenings, and also legitimate. There is no illegitimacy involved in this. So all that we can conceive is that such a child is the child of that mother who gave birth to him. Now, I don't claim that this is exactly what happened. What I am telling you is that these are also the possibilities which should be probed. But one thing is positive, and that is final, that as Hazrat Masih Maud has mentioned, God never breaks his own laws. It is inconceivable. God is the source of all wisdom. And because he also knows future, so it is impossible to attribute any such irresponsible act to him, to have devised laws where no exceptions were left already. These are the exceptions which we are just discussing. And he had suddenly found himself in a position where there was no way out, so he had to break the wall and walk out of the wall instead of out of the door, which was locked. So no such thing is possible. Why I am saying it? Because when you discuss these things with your friends and you suggest even such a thing, they will raise hue and cry against your even conceiving such a possibility. They will say, then this is a reflection of the child. The child is that of his grandfather, that sort of thing. And very ugly and bitter, degrading things would be said about whoever even put forward this possibility as an idea. They can't accept it. They can't tolerate such an insult to Jesus Christ. But on the other hand, they can accept all the insult to God and his wisdom of creation. I mean, this is the dilemma they face, and they don't realize that if it is an evil, we don't consider it to be an evil. But if it is an evil, it is positively lesser evil than to impute stupidities to God and such acts of rashness as to create without wisdom, without conceiving the future possibilities, and leaving him no room ultimately, but to break his own laws. That is what is not possible. So because it's time for prayer, inshallah we'll take up the discussion from here in the next session tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum.